That's it, Jason.
Yeah.
Good morning. This is Down and Dirty on WMNF. Jason Marlowe, how are you today?
I am doing excellent. How about yourself, John?
I'm good. So we love that song, Dirty Laundry. It kind of jives with Down and Dirty. That's what the show is all about. We address and attack local issues with local folks from the Bay Area to talk about what's hot and happening in the Bay Area. Today, we are pleased and honored to welcome two guests. Marlene Sokol, I've known for many, many years. Marlene, how many years have you been with the Tampa Bay Times? Or were you with the Tribune before that? I can't remember.
Never the Tribune, and about 35 years with the Tampa Bay Times.
Wow.
Give or take.
All right.
Fantastic.
I'm literally 35, so that's my whole life.
And her most recent beat is covering schools and school board. And how many years doing that?
About 12 years covering the Hillsborough County schools.
We're so pleased you're here today. And we also have a school board member, Nadia Combs. Nadia, you got welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. Really excited to be here.
Yeah. So you were elected, 4 years ago for the first time?
4 years ago in 2020, coming up for my re-election on August 20th.
Absolutely. And what were you doing leading up to your election? I believe you were, like me, a middle school teacher.
Yeah, I started out as a middle school teacher, taught overseas in Japan, came back here and taught in Hillsborough County, and then I opened a couple of educational businesses.
Now, you're being humble because I read that you were School Teacher of the Year for Hillsborough County, which is
for social studies.
Pretty impressive, thousands and thousands of school teachers, and you came out number one.
Well, I'm very passionate about education. I really thought I would retire as a teacher. I went back to have my administration degree, and then all of a sudden things changed, and I just started working in education, but really tutoring, after-school tutoring. And then in 2020, right when COVID came, I thought, you know what, I really want to give back. I've got the education background. I've got the business background. I ended up running for office and closed my center because I didn't realize what a huge job this was because there was so much going on, and have really just been very passionate about this position. And I'm really excited about my upcoming election.
And Jason, you've known Nadia for a while.
Yeah, she beat the anti-union advocate Steve Kona by by 10%? It was 60-40 almost. You won. I know you won every precinct.
I did.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, reminder everybody.
I'm a very hard worker, especially when something is so important.
The funny thing is I've done my share of campaigning, 6 elections over 20-something years. And the funny thing is people say, it's like, oh, campaigning is miserable. It's like, I actually like campaigning because you meet people. You meet people, you knock on their doors, you see them out at the mall or even waving on the street corner. And you get to meet a lot of nice people, and that's what it's all about.
I drove your truck. I drove a truck for the very first time. We went out and knocked it 5 years ago.
You did drive my truck. I can't remember why you drove it and I didn't, but anyway.
Your knee was acting up.
Well, that could have been it.
Well, I have to say, like going out there, out in the communities and knocking on doors is just amazing. Yeah. Meeting people, meeting families, and just seeing how different parts of Hillsborough County, how people live and the way they live and just the interaction. It's just been great. I love that. It has been very hot, though, I have to say. It's been about 105, 106 out there sometimes. It's hot, but it's worth it.
Yeah, at least you're a district, I believe.
Yeah.
But one time I campaigned countywide. That was just insane. I feel sorry for anybody who has to do that.
1.4 million people, so that's bigger, I think, than 11 states.
It's a few too many doors to knock. Well, listen, the reason we invited you folks here today is the school board and the county commission are involved in something rather unusual and probably unprecedented. Marlene, what's going on at the school board and county commission?
Well, the school board wanted to ask the voters for their approval in November to raise their property taxes to bring them up to par with other districts that already have these taxes, which go to increase employee pay. They were all set to go, all systems go. And then on July 17th, the county commission by a 4-3 vote said, well, no, you can't do it this year. You could do it maybe in 2026.
Now, Nadia, why did the school board want to, increase property tax? Some people would complain taxes are already too high.
Well, I think what people don't realize, like years ago, the governor took the mill from us and we were promised to receive it back. So Pinellas County, for 20 years, they've had it. All the surrounding districts, all the other large districts have that additional millage. we're looking at we have a shortage of 500 teachers.
Why?
Because teachers. You have teachers going to food banks. I know that when I was a teacher many years ago, I was able to live, but with the rate of inflation and housing, teachers they can't afford to live. Most teachers have at least a second job. But I think the biggest issue is that at the end of the day, what are we going to prioritize? But more importantly, let the voters decide. For me, this is what democracy is all about. I taught social studies. I was a history teacher. It's all about democracy and allowing voters to decide. The idea that there was so much overstepping on this is really quite shocking, to tell you the truth.
But let's go back to the teachers, because I understand the teachers union is very much involved in supporting this effort. What do Hillsborough County teachers start at compared to the surrounding counties?
We still start less. We're right at 49, but the problem is after 2 or 3 or 4 years in Pinellas County, you can make an extra $10,000, or in Manatee County. So just this past year alone, I lost two great administrators. So it happens very often where people are going to Pinellas or going to Manatee or they're going to Sarasota. And they can live, much more comfortably, and they can support their families. And so and you don't want to have all brand new teachers. The idea is not only are we not attracting, but we're also not retaining teachers. And it's a huge gap. One of my schools right now, we have about 14 vacancies going in. Wow. And so what happens to those students?
A lot of substitutes.
Yeah, and most of those students are in vulnerable communities. So they're coming to school for stability, and they're going to see different teachers. And what does that look like compounded after several years? What happens to that child?
But Marlene, you probably see it from both sides, because I'm sure you run into taxpayers who say, doesn't the school board already have $1 billion to spend? And why should we trust them with an additional mill?
Yeah, trust is a big issue. And years ago, not too many years ago, Hillsborough County earned a reputation in the state for being really bad with money. And they were on the brink of insolvency, of a state takeover. They've reversed that.
Did you see it that way as well, or was that just a bad rap?
No, it was not just a bad rap. They got involved, and this is going back 10 years ago, in the Gates program, which was a teaching reform program pushed by Bill Gates. It blew up in their faces. They were supposed to get $100 million. They ended up getting $80 million, but they spent $270 million. So it was, in hindsight, it was not a good thing, and it took years to clean up from that. As far as waste, and you do hear people around town who will say, oh, the district wastes so much money. And yeah, in any large organization, you're going to be able to see some things, and some of that is subjective. But district people, what they've told me is, yeah, we could probably find ways to save $1 million here and $1 million there. But this tax has the potential of bringing in $177 million. So, it's perspective.
Jason?
I just want to use Marlene's last word there, perspective. According to the National Education Association, Florida ranks 50th in the United States for K through 12 pay. So for those listeners, if you're not aware, there are 50 states in the United States, which means we are literally last. With an average salary of $53,000, Florida teachers earn below the national average of about $69,000 and below the state's minimum wage of $58,900.
Well, the governor should feel very proud, huh?
Oh, he should be ecstatic.
We're number one at the bottom.
Not only that, in Tampa, you used to say, okay, teachers don't make much, but you get $5,000 in sunshine. Tampa used to be a cheap place to live. And, now, forget it. My daughter lives in New York. Her friends that she grew up with in Tampa are paying more in rent than she is. And so all of that has changed with, if you had to pick one thing, even the price of housing. So, no, you can't come in making $48,000 and support a family. It just doesn't add up.
So listen, if you're just tuning in, this is WMNF, and we are down and dirty from 10 to 11 o'clock every Friday morning. This morning, we are honored to have Nadia Combs, who's a school board member, Hillsborough County in Tampa, and Marlene Sokol, who's been with the Tampa Bay Times. She just admitted 35 years.
At least.
She started at 12.
Thank you.
Nadia, a very impressive endorsement from the Tampa Bay Times. And I'm sure Marlene was not part of it because they don't do that.
Glowing
But
endorsement.
It says Nadia Combs is one of the best Hillsborough County School Board members to have served in decades. She's student-focused, open and accountable, moderate and forward-looking. Everything voters should be looking for in these divisive times. It's very impressive. But speaking of divisive times, what we're talking about. Oh, and by the way, we want to include you. Please give us a call, 813-239-9663. Our phone lines are open. Irene, we appreciate you answering the phone. Speaking of divisive times, a couple of divisive things going on here. For one thing, the governor, in rather unprecedented, I don't recall any governor ever picking a bunch of school board members to actively be opposed to. And Nadia, I believe you were on that hit list.
Yeah, and it was interesting. He came here the other day, and we went from 33 DNF schools to 8, and he failed to even mention that. So I think that says a lot. I mean, we're doing, we've, like Marlene said, we've been able to balance our budget. We've worked extremely hard.
Happy with the superintendent?
Yes, we're very happy with the superintendent and such academic gains, and everyone's working so hard. And for our governor to not even mention that, and then for me, as far as very humble to receive those endorsements, I am really committed. My entire life has been about education. For someone, I mean, he didn't speak to me. Did he ask me about my background, about my purpose, and about the things that I've done? I didn't receive an endorsement question or questionnaire.
You and Jessica Vaughn, I believe, were the two that he attacked. Mm-hmm. And I know Jessica to be a progressive. The newspaper says you're a moderate. So
yeah, I mean, I've been I'm probably the most fiscal conservative on the board, because at the end of the day, I mean, it was the most difficult choice was when I had to decide on just elementary, and I've made some really challenging decisions, but every time I make a decision, I think what's best for students. It's hard. I mean, I know there's so many people in the community that say, hey, what's best for me? But I think to myself, when I make that vote, what's best for that student, so that way one day they can become a leader. One day they can become a community leader. So that's how I base my decisions. And so it's really unfortunate that would occur, but it just, honestly, for me, it just fuels me. You know, the more adversity I have, I've grown up with adversity. I grew up without anything. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I never imagined myself to be here. And for me, it just fuels me. If you hear my voice, if you know my voice, this is not my normal voice. I've been working literally 18 hours a day, and I'm ready to make sure that the voters know exactly who I am and to be reelected.
You're passionate, and we appreciate passion in every form. Marlene, unprecedented from a governor to do this, in my recollection, 30-something years paying attention. I'm
not a historian, so I wouldn't swear one way or another to that. But yeah, it was surprising. It was unusual. I think this is almost a cliche, but right now everything is partisan. Mm-hmm. We saw that COVID was partisan. We've seen so many things partisan, and even this issue about the tax in Hillsborough, the vote to postpone it on the county commission, it was 4-3, 100% along party lines.
How about at the school board side? Was it
not so much?
School board members are elected nonpartisan, so we don't really.
Though they're trying to change that.
Yeah,
keep that in mind.
And you sort of know where people stand. So two of the Republican school board members, you can kind of predict often how they're going to vote on an issue because this is their ideology, this is their philosophy. The board chair, interestingly, Karen Perez, she's Democrat, and she's gone back and forth on the issue. 2 years ago, when they tried this referendum and it failed, she voted against it. And then this year, she voted yes to put it on the ballot. But then when it came to the lawsuit, she voted no on the lawsuit.
And without really explanation, right?
I spoke to her a couple of days ago, and I asked her, because I said, you didn't say anything on the dais, so what is the deal? And her answer was, well, in April, when we were voting on, whether to put it on the ballot, I felt like the people should have a chance to decide. It was at a time when people felt they were losing, their voice for other issues. She said, then I reflected on it, and I said, I've met too many people in her capacity as a social worker. I've met too many people who are really struggling to pay their bills. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that there's a logic in there, but that was what she said.
Well, for me,
right.
I just don't understand how you just don't allow democracy. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. Is I should not have a
You're
million
saying by
votes.
put it on the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, I have one vote, just like everyone else. Why allow someone to say it's illegal or not legal? Let the voters decide.
Yeah.
So to me, I completely, fundamentally disagree with what she says, what Member Perez said.
All right. Well, we've got a couple of callers,
Ooh.
Jason. We've got we'll take Jeff in Plant City.
Jeff?
Hold on. Jeff, are you there?
Jeff?
Hold on.
Now I'm here.
Oh,
All
hey,
right. There you go,
hey,
Jeff.
Jeff. How's it going?
It's good. I heard that static, and I knew that was the connection.
Okay. What's up? What do you think of this topic?
Well, I did watch a little bit of his news conference, and
DeSantis, that is?
we need to sanitize. Anyway, you said that you balanced the budget for the school board. Is that true?
Ms. Combs, I believe.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we do. We have three jobs, and of course, that's one of our main jobs.
And it's really it is billion or more dollars.
4.3 billion.
It was at one time one of the biggest, if not still the biggest school systems in the country.
Yeah, number
seven.
Biggest,
Yeah.
or-
So what's your question, Jeff? We're glad to have you
I don't
on.
have a question. I wanted to make note of what he did say. Well, you're just going to have to do a better job with the money you got.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow.
Meanwhile,
But
every
you
other
do-
county has
Yeah.
has this tax. I mean, like all of the other counties, which are frankly redder than us. I
But you
look
do
at-
hear that around town sometimes. Just one person who I bumped into, this is a person I know socially through tennis, and she's retired school district, and right out of her mouth was, this district wastes so much money. So there is that reputation. The superintendent of schools, Van Air, what he keeps saying is, look, just give me a level playing field. I need the same thing that Orange County has, and Miami-Dade and Pinellas and Pasco. I need a level playing field.
Because a young teacher coming out of Gainesville, Tallahassee, USF, what have you, at that point in their career, they're flexible. They can go up and down the highway and settle down wherever they want.
Or somebody who lives in South County and they can just go to Manatee every day for $9,000 more a year,
Yeah.
and it's just.
And what are we at, like 500 teachers short? I read.
500. And I think it's the rhetoric. People create this narrative, and then people just spread that. People who don't want to support our public schools or don't want to pay taxes. I understand that. Everybody is struggling right now. I mean, I understand that personally. I say I'm driving an 08. I don't even know how many years. That's a 16-year-old car.
I got a 99.
Okay, well, I drive mine every day, though. I
give you
drive
a ride home if it
I
breaks
drive
down.
mine every day. I'm sure yours is in a garage somewhere. That's very
a truck,
different.
John?
That's my daily car, with 247,000 miles. But I think that the most important thing is, I can only speak for myself, but I spend so many hours on every single agenda item. And I ask so many questions and make sure that we're looking at every single budget item. But then there's rhetoric. Like the other day I was in an event and somebody said at a forum, well, the Hillsborough County School Board, they sent $220 million on a contract with social and emotional learning. I'm like, that is so untrue.
$220
million. That's what they
Yeah.
said. And I was like, so people say things like that, and they actually said it on a forum where it was being televised. So when
So
people
what was more accurate? Just were they off by a zero?
Yes, I mean, I didn't even tell me the program that they were talking about. So what I'm saying is, when and I will say this as someone who owned a tutoring center, to go to Berkeley Prep is around $33,000. Carrollwood Day School is about $25,000. Tampa Catholic is about $18,000. For us, we get less than $9,000 per child.
Per student.
So, I mean,
And I want to talk about charter schools too. We have Joe and Jeff. Thanks for calling earlier. We have Joe in St. Pete. Let's see what Joe has to say.
Joe.
Good morning,
Hey, Joe.
Joe. Are you there?
Joe.
Joe, are you there?
Hear me.
Did I lose him?
Yep, I think he's not there.
Hold on.
Mystery Joe.
Let me try one more time. Joe?
Cup of Joe.
Joe, are you there?
Oh, I like that.
That was about. All right.
All right, I've got
We tried,
Robert
Joe.
down in Sarasota. We love you guys all the way out there.
I'm here. Listening to the program, and I want you to understand this comes from a respectful place. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I've been in the workforce roughly 40 years out of my 57 years of life, and I started down here, and I think I'm working my way up as I'm getting ready to exit the workforce. But every job that I've had in every profession, I haven't liked my pay. I'm trying to understand, listening to today's topic, why teachers, it sounds like teachers feel like they have legs on an issue that they're not getting paid what they think they should be getting paid, because my boss in my profession would tell me to pound salt if I pounded my fist and wanted more money. So why aren't we having a conversation about teachers being workers just like everybody else? If you don't like your income and your working conditions, go somewhere else. And
Okay.
I would love to. I would love to respond to that.
I would say they do.
Yes, they
That's
do.
the problem.
They
go
do,
other
Joe.
places.
They do. That's why we have 500 vacancies. That's why kids are walking into empty classrooms.
That's why there's three former teachers.
My thing is, if you don't educate someone after many years, what's going to occur? I mean, there's going to be crime. They're going to rely on the social welfare system. And I also want to say that when I was a new teacher, I did live in South Tampa, and I lived in an apartment, and I remember going on vacation. I did have a used car, but I was able to afford a life.
And what was your rent back then? Probably $400 or $500.
Yes. So so teachers go in, but I don't think teachers expected this type of inflation in Hillsborough County as far as housing, as far as the cost of living, food, rent, electricity, all of that has compounded. So the rate of so I think what's kept up is nurses. They've actually moved. For example, people who used to go into education are now going into nursing because generally you're somebody who wants to take care of people, you want to help people, but nursing, that has increased. The rate of pay has increased and the status has increased. But unfortunately, here it hasn't. And I have to say that because I did live in Asia for 4 years. And if you look at some of the countries where students are coming from, in that regard, educators are very well paid and they're extremely well respected. Just that question shows that and I'm not meaning this in any disrespectful way, but it shows that there's really not a lack of respect for this profession that builds lawyers, plumbers, doctors, mechanics, that this country is not really prioritizing that.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say this is someone who went and got a master's degree in social science education, went and taught high school and middle school for 3 years. I left. Did they go other places? Yes, I got a master's degree in education, and then I left and did something else. I could still be helping, children in the community if they were going to compensate me.
Part of your leaving was what, money?
100%.
100%.
I mean, by the end of my third year, I made $1,100 more than I did my first year starting.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great I'm really climbing the ladder to success.
Well, that same thing happened to me. I had worked in the urban core inner city for 10 years, then went out to the suburbs, and I was a 13-year teacher with a master's degree. I was a team leader, and if you know me, you know I'm a workaholic. I was working, visiting homes, everything. I was making like $600 more than a brand new teacher. And I still was going to stay because I was married, and together we could make it. But then, things happened, and I just kind of ended up doing something else. But I love teaching. I love the art of teaching.
But you still stayed in education.
I still stayed in education. And now I'm actually making even less than that. So I think it's hilarious, but that's okay.
So let's recap and remind folks we're here at WMNF. We're down and dirty on Friday mornings, and today's topic is education, and specifically there's a lawsuit going on. It's kind of crazy. There's a lawsuit going on between the school board and the county commission. Specifically, the school board was seeking to put a tax increase on the ballot, let voters decide. And the county commission said, you know what, why don't we hold off and put that on 2 years from now? The school board, I think Marlene said, the school board attorney, I spoke with Jim Porter yesterday, but basically the school board's position is no county commission. The law says when we say put it on, you put it on. County commission says, no, that's not the way we read the law. I think it's in Judge Emily Peacock's lap.
Yes.
I know Judge Peacock for many years. It'll be interesting to see how she decides, and she's going to decide when.
Well, she said Monday. She said by Monday. So I've been checking the filings constantly.
She'll probably take the weekend to
yeah, that's what my
tweak it
husband
up.
says. But it's been an interesting thing to follow the paper trail because the arguments on both sides. This is what lawyers do.
There's not a lot of case law out there for guidance. I've read it. I read your article. I read some of the cases. In my opinion, as a lawyer, I think it could go either way, and then, frankly, it probably could go up on appeal very easily.
And it seems like they're, as a non-lawyer, it seems like they're almost reading tea leaves. They're pulling from two different laws about these taxes, but one's about property, one's about sales. They also pull from an opinion from 1952 that did not even involve schools. It involved a judicial nominee who died so they needed a special election.
Lawyers are desperate when they go back 70 years.
Yes. It was, So it's, and the most fascinating thing, if we want to just nerd out for a quick minute, is when they start saying, well, what did the legislature mean when what were they thinking?
Legislative history.
What did they intend?
That's when lawyers are very, very desperate.
Did they intend for the county commission to have some authority, or did they intend for the school districts to have?
And the language is vague.
It is vague. They use passive voice. There's one clause. It says, "Such election may be held at any time." Why use passive voice? Why not put subject?
which leads me to the absurd conclusion that they could agree with the school board and put this on 10 years from now.
Or 100 years.
Or 100
That's
years.
the other problem.
Oh, man, I'm going to look forward to that vote in 2022.
Yeah, when they say postpone to 2026, there's no guarantee that they'll do it in 2026. So, lawyers are having, I guess, a good time.
And listen, I'm not an attorney. I do watch a lot of Law and Order, but
bling, bling.
The thing that I find really dun 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 dun. But I'll say the thing that I find frustrating is the only people that are going to enjoy this are the attorneys, because we, the Hillsborough County taxpayers, are going to be subsidizing the overtime of Hillsborough County attorneys, of Hillsborough County School Board attorneys. So when somebody like Commissioner Wostel claims the mantle of fiscal responsibility, it is a lie, because you cannot care about the taxpayer dollars if you're going to allow a food fight to be conducted with our taxpayer dollars on something we all kind of collectively agreed on, that we were going to let it be on the ballot and vote it up or down.
Well, I'll be devil's advocate for just a minute.
That's Joshua Wostel's job.
No, and I'm not saying I'm anti-tax, but the counter argument is this is something. For the same logic that the law changed in 2022, saying it can only be the general election, not a special election, you got to wonder, it's so far down ballot. So are people going to vote yes for it, maybe not realizing that it's going to raise taxing costs? Again, I'm being devil's advocate here. But
I'm going to be the triple devil's advocate.
All right, cool.
Let the voter.
Okay.
That voter, if it's down 100%. Ballot or it's up ballot, it's their business.
Become informed and vote.
Yeah, I mean,
we have an unprecedented number of calls here.
Ooh.
I'm going to go to Carl in Clearwater. Been waiting the longest. Carl, can you hear me?
Yes.
How you doing?
Good.
Good.
My family goes back to the 60s, way back in Florida. And none of the legislature send their kids to public schools. Public schools have been given crumbs for decades. They're union teachers. And I don't care if it's public transportation or public schools or unemployment insurance. It doesn't work in Florida, and it never has. And, we can talk it to death, and the attorneys can make loads of money, but unless there's a change in the state government, this problem is just never ending.
That's bigger than all of us. Carl, thanks for calling.
Yeah, and
Nadia is going to respond.
I want to
Nadia
say,
Combs
Carl,
is our school board representative. Yes,
Sorry,
ma'am.
Carl, I couldn't agree more. And it's even worse when you have a county commissioner who gets on TV and says, our public schools aren't that great anyways. Our charter schools are doing so much better, which was incorrect information because our if you look at our number of DNF schools and you look at the percentage, but for someone to say that when the vast majority of students are going to public schools and to talk so negatively about our schools, someone who's supposed to be the representative of our community, I mean, he represents where I live. Okay,
Where all of us live.
And
He's
I know,
countywide.
yes, and in my community, my neighbors, they go to private school, they go to charter school. Everybody was very offended by that.
Are we unanimous in this room that all four of us went to public school?
Went to public school, taught public school.
Marlene?
Went to, barely a school. It was Philadelphia, but yes, went to public school.
Yes, I went to public school.
Me too. All right, we've got some more calls. Let's go to Molly in Tampa. Molly, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for waiting. What's up?
Well, I was listening, and the previous caller, 2 callers back, Joe, I thought it was really interesting, that he said if teachers don't like their pay, go elsewhere. And clearly he wasn't listening to everything that was presented. And I find that dynamic really interesting because I think a lot of our voters are that way. They go in with their mind set on what things should be like. And when faced with what is reality out there, they're not willing to listen and accept it. And I think that's a big problem with our voters. Sorry, I'm out working in my yard, and so I'm out of breath.
It's hot out there.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, I just thought that was really interesting. He sounded like he was deferential, he was respectful, but he really didn't listen to anything that was said previously about the shortage of teachers. We're at, 500 teachers short. There's a reason for that, and people probably need to start wrapping their heads around it. And maybe I am in his age group, but I have young kids. I have young 20-year-olds that are still finishing college and in college. Maybe he's not in touch with that young crowd, and it might help to go out and engage.
Molly, we
young people.
We appreciate your input. Stay cool. And school board member Nadia Combs is going to respond. Thanks a lot.
I couldn't agree with you more. I have to say my daughter is going into her sophomore year at college up in Florida State.
Mazel tov.
Yes, and thank you. And she said to me, Mom, I mean, even the other day, she said, I think I'd love to be a teacher, but I just know that I couldn't afford to live. Like I couldn't afford to live in Tampa. And she said to me, I have been at Florida State. I have met thousands of people, and I have not met one teacher. You rarely meet people when people are complaining, hey, there's no teachers. And I'm like, okay, well, you have a bunch of children. Are any of them going into education? And they're like, no. So that's the biggest issue. We just don't have. And so what we're doing now.
We have a crisis.
Yeah, we have a crisis. I mean, if you notice the governor is pushing out, okay, now you can keep working. We'll let you work till you're 100 years old. But guess what happens? What's going to happen in 10 years when all of these hardworking teachers who are 30 years and now doing 35, when they start dropping, we have nobody else coming into the ranks. And not only that, let's face it, it's harder in society. Kids are more challenging. There's more violence. There's
less parental support.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, I was at a school last year where a teacher had to go get a tetanus shot because a child had bit her and scratched her. And, obviously that child had challenges, but it's such a hard job. I challenge anyone to just go spend one day in the classroom. And it's not just about teaching. It's about grading the papers, preparing the lessons, communicating with the parents, individualizing the IEP, going to meetings.
Maybe the school board needs to initiate some type of program like that where you come in instead of teaching for a day, maybe you observe for a day.
Yeah,
I think it's also, I want to speak for myself, it's also the emotional thing. I mean, I had kids who lost their parents.
Yes.
I mean, you got to be there for that kid. I mean, that's an important part, in my opinion, of the profession is like understanding what, these kids as individuals are going through and actually trying to, be there in the way that you can for 1 hour a day, maybe 2-3 days a week.
Sometimes a social worker in addition to being a teacher.
100%.
We have DeAndre in Brandon. DeAndre, thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Yes. Good morning. I'm curious. I know that like the majority of educators in the U.S., but then likely even Hillsborough County, demographically are new college, like younger college age to on up, white women, right? And I know the urban core is it used to be the Harlem of the South, so to say. I'm just curious when it comes to the segregation and education and employment, and as well as some other things like the bodies in the building. When are Hillsborough County educators going to get in front of that? I feel like that's a curse that nobody wants to address.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you saying
That's a
that.
great question. Let's see if we're addressing it. Thanks for calling, DeAndre.
Yeah, let me say something. Just 2 weeks ago in my board meeting, that's exactly what I talked about. I talked about this disparity that if you are, that's why I was very disappointed with our vote that it wasn't 7-0, because if you really are worried about our urban core, then you'll know that you're 75% more likely to have a substitute teacher there. Although we are paying teachers more, $10,000 to $15,000 more to work in the urban core, I can tell you those teachers are covering more classes. They're dealing with more challenges. As a teacher like that, I can't tell you how much money I spent out of my own pocket to support a child.
I think the caller had an insinuation that we're not hiring enough minority teachers. How do you feel about that?
I think we're if you look at our cabinet and you look at our upper division, we have the most diverse cabinet we've ever had. We are trying to attract and retain teachers from the urban core because I think students want to see that, but it's very difficult because first of all, if you grew up in the urban core right now and you're coming in, Florida doesn't really put much money in early learning. So already you're coming behind. And then you go into a school where you're going to have a substitute teacher. And then maybe you have instability. How are those individuals going to end up going to college to even get a teaching degree? So I think it's two-way. And then when you do get someone from the urban core who graduates, often they're like, do I really want to go into teaching where there's kind of a ceiling where I'm only making $50,000? So we're actively trying to recruit every day. Especially right now, because 40% of our students are Hispanic, and we really don't have as many teachers and administrators. We're actively trying.
I'm sorry, Marlene Sokol, have you written about that issue?
Yeah, we did. Actually, we did some pretty hard math on that last year. We looked at the 33 schools that had received a D or an F, and we tried to wrap our heads around what's going on here. Many of them were in the urban core, and when we looked at the teachers, we saw that if you were in one of those schools, you were much more likely to have either a substitute or somebody teaching out of field or somebody who was not fully certified or somebody who had been rated unsatisfactory by the state. Any single metric we looked at, the lower income inner city schools, they were getting lesser quality teachers. That's the only way to put it.
I guess, do teachers have a choice in terms of where they want to teach?
Yeah, they do. And the example that the superintendent always gives is Gorey Elementary, which is in South Tampa.
Which is where my children went.
Yeah, and so people are hired there and they never leave and they spend their whole career there. Whereas I'm not going to pick a school out to disparage them, but at a disadvantaged school, it's much more turnover. We also measured the turnover, and the turnover, it was insane. So these kids don't have a chance, and that's where
it's sort of a vicious
comes in.
Cycle.
It is a
with
vicious
all of
cycle.
these, with all of these factors.
You're walking in the door with disadvantages, and you don't even have a fully qualified teacher, and that teacher's not even going to stay the full year.
And can I add a couple things on that?
Do.
As I said, one of the things that we do try to financially incentivize them. That's why one of the things that I've really been thinking about is doing some affordable housing for teachers. And if they lived in that area, they'd have to work in those 20 urban schools. That is one of the things that I am really, that's probably one of my top priorities as I get reelected, trying to fill that gap. I really stay up at night thinking about the urban core and how do we place people in there.
I know we had a retired teacher building, which is over there on the Hillsborough River. But that's a great idea for active teachers.
And I want to say one other thing. You look at West Tampa Elementary. It was an F school, then a D school, and they became an A. Okay, not only did they have, all their teaching vacancies filled, but they also created a PTA because there wasn't parent involvement. So the PTA came and created a PTA and then tried to bring the community in. And then they had a community leader who has put a lot of time and money and energy into that school. So you see, when people put time and money and energy into a school, regardless of where you are, you're going to see that movement. So that's what we need to do at every school. But unfortunately, where's the money and where are the people?
Well, speaking of inner city schools, you guys wrestled with that issue this past year or two about closing some of the inner city schools. Marlene, you've written quite a bit about that.
Yeah, they needed to, they felt that they needed to close some schools because of under-enrollment and because the boundaries just didn't make sense.
Enrollment had dropped like 50% and some of them hadn't.
Yeah, some of them were below 50% utilized. So they made the hard decision, closed 6 schools, the first one a year ahead of the rest, and that was Just Elementary School. And that was a very emotional decision. It divided the board. I think it was another 4-3 vote because you had people who said, well, school district, you've let this school down. You just have not done enough for this school. And then you had the other half saying, these kids aren't learning. They can't read. They can't attract teachers at this school. We're not doing the kids a favor. So, yeah, they closed 6 schools.
They sort of just mothball them for a while until there's another purpose?
They haven't said what, other than we're not going to sell the buildings, we're not going to surplus the buildings. They have not really said what they're going to do with the 6 buildings. Well, actually, Just is going to be rebuilt. That they have said.
And I'll give you my opinion. I don't think they should ever sell property.
Absolutely.
Because you never get it back.
That's our asset. Yeah. I mean, why do you think so many people are interested in the school
board?
And
if we don't need it today, we might need it 50 years from now. So that you can lease it, you lease it out or something.
Even Rosac, I think, let's do a 99-year lease. I mean, we've got to be innovative and do things like that, because if we're not going to get money from the state and we're not going to get money locally, we just have to be innovative. That was probably the hardest vote that I ever had to do because I really felt for the community and I understood that, but I had to remember, why was I there?
Fiscal
responsibility, but also more importantly, 14 out of 28 of those teachers were substitutes.
Yeah.
For me, that was the biggest compelling. Would you send your child, anybody in the community who came in and said, let's save that school, I want to come in, I want to volunteer. I'm would you bring your child there if you knew that they were going to get a sub? I don't think so.
Yeah, Jason Marlowe, speaking of the school board getting cut, the county commission does have the CIT issue, the community investment tax issue, on the ballot. But instead of what was it before? 25%? Where
5%, and that was basically to throw shade where it belongs to 5% of the CIT, where it normally had been 20%. And I just want to throw shade where it belongs. Former Commissioner Michael Owen, where a lot of these new schools and infrastructure is going to be built, sold out his own district, and 4 years from now there are going to be people in South County and East. There are going to be folks in South County, in Wimauma, or South Shore, or Ruskin, or Plant City. And one day, their kid's going to be going to a school with 28, 30 kids in their classroom, and they're going to wonder why there's no new schools for all their kids to go to. And you'll have Michael Owen to thank because that was all his brilliant idea.
Where did he go?
Or they'll be in portables with substitutes.
Yeah, and again,
didn't he decide to run for Tallahassee?
He's running for State House District 70, so feel free to send him a letter and thank him. He's very busy closing down the barns of his political opponents, so he's got a lot of time on his hands.
So another hot issue, Nadia, and Marlene, that you covered, Nadia voted on, I guess, the other day, was cell phones. And I actually mentioned this as a topic several months ago. Personally, I think, the children shouldn't have cell phones in school unless it's an emergency. And if it's an emergency, maybe you just call the office like you used to.
How old are you? No. I'm asking because,
I'm 67.
Forever young.
And I'm about the same age as you, and that's how I think. But I'm not sure that parents in their 30s and kids in their tweens.
Well, the bottom line is the school board voted for something. What did you guys vote on?
I mean, I was very excited. Member Gray and we led that from the very beginning. I felt very strongly about that. When you are in
what was school, the motion?
The motion was elementary and middle school. They're banned. I mean, not banned, but they're in the backpack.
In the backpack.
So parents can feel safe that if there's an emergency, it's in the backpack, but they're not allowed out. And guess what? Kids are going to actually talk to each other at lunch. I have to say, Webb Middle School, and I
Talk
know
to each other?
Marlene and I went out to Webb Middle School.
Thank you for that invite, by the way.
And we are so proud because Webb Middle School went from a C school to a B school. But more importantly, the level of disruption, the level of fighting, the discipline issues, and
But
just
because-
kids being in
because
class
they enacted
they enacted it a year earlier. They said, you know what, we're going to do this. There are a couple schools like Walker was doing that. There are several schools.
So it was
but
a
Webb Middle
principal's
School,
decision.
the principal, Principal Venezuela, she's just amazing. She was at Tampa Bay Boulevard. She came in.
The other issue is like bullying, right?
Yes, and
because if you got their phones out and everybody's bullying each other, sort of semi-anonymously on their cell phones, that's not healthy.
Well, also fight clubs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That you actually have
Well, hold
fight
on.
clubs.
The first rule of Fight Club is that we don't talk about Fight Club. And
Well,
you know
if
what
you're
the
being-
second
if you're
rule
being
about Fight Club
videotaped,
What is
is
it?
that we don't talk about Fight Club.
All right, what's the Fight Club about? I'm not
Well,
even
what
familiar.
they would do is, and in fact, not necessarily at the school, but you challenge somebody to fight, but the reason for the fight is so you can make a video of it and everybody can see. And what they were doing at Webb was not having the fight on school grounds, but in the parking lot across the street. But on the phone, they were telling people, okay, at dismissal, go to this parking lot, there'll be a fight. So, yeah, I mean, the thinking is that it does encourage fights because of the notoriety. And you can go on Snapchat or whatever it is called today and see, lots of videos of especially in middle schools, not so much high school. But
I remember my only fight was in, I think, 6th grade. And it was old school. You'd
Only
say,
one?
hey, I'll meet you after school.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got a couple.
But now the problem is, remember, you'd say, hey, I'll meet you in the bathroom in 5th period at 10:07, and you're trying to get it passed.
That's a very specific time to have
I'm
a
just saying,
fight.
now kids are, texting each other. And also what people don't realize, the amount of academic cheating that's happening as well. Kids are really cheating on tests. Really, when they're copying homework and they're sending it to each other. I mean, even,
right
yeah,
then
I
and
mean,
there.
there's
so
so
how about,
much.
How about high school? What do we do with high
Okay,
school?
well, high school, it's going to be left up to the principal. Now, I will say, and this is really important, every year, we have groups of students that come into us, leaders, and then we have in a meeting and we talk to our students. So this past year, I was all in elementary, middle, and high school. But during that meeting, I spoke to about 20 leaders in the schools, and they said, Member Combs, the problem is we use our technology a lot in school to do research. And until our district is really strongly one-on-one and they have a strong Wi-Fi, it can kind of interfere with learning. And so you have to imagine, we have so many issues in high school. For a principal to be kind of fighting with that, I think we need to go slowly. I mean, I think let's do elementary, let's do middle school, and let's reevaluate in a year or so where we are. But me personally, I think cell phones should be really kept in backpacks at all times. I think earbuds should be. I think you're walking into school, you're not walking into the mall, and you're not walking into the beach. So
I love what you said about children talking to each
Yes.
other, and it's across society at every level. But I went to a political function. And my wife and I happened to sit at a table with 20-year-olds, and we loved chatting with everybody and anybody. And the 20-year-olds all had their head in their cell phone and didn't talk to each other, didn't talk to us. It was really kind of sad. We have probably one last call today. Marita in Wesley Chapel. We are getting calls from the whole Bay Area.
Wow.
Marita, you
Wide
are...
reach. We're like
Yes, I see that.
casting
You
a
are
web
with
like
us. Where'd
Spider-Man.
you go? Hold on. Marita, can you hear us?
come back, Marita. Come
right.
back.
Yes.
She's somewhere with
Irene,
Joe.
for some reason...
Yeah, Marita
Venus
and Joe. I like that.
They're both together.
I hope they're
Let
having
me try
fun.
one more time. Marita, can you hear me?
Marita, if you're here, help us find Joe.
Oh, well. All right, I'll try one more time.
Search
in a few
party
minutes.
for Joe.
Marita, call back in. How's that? Call back in.
Or we'll keep nerding out here.
Yes, yes.
I could do this all day.
All right, so what else is going on? The pandemic. How did we survive the pandemic in terms of schools? I'm glad I wasn't a parent during that period. And I know my grandchildren actually got pulled out of school and I think went into some small group situation.
And I run into people now and then, and their kids are not going to college. The pandemic just messed them up. You know, it's.
I think it sped everything up. I think there's a book called The Anxious Society. And I think what you're seeing with the pandemic, it sped everything up. And kids are more and more isolated. You don't see kids out on the street. I think about that as I'm going, knocking on doors to doors, and I'm there in the afternoon. I rarely see kids out in the street riding bikes. I never see that. They're at home with videos. Right? And what's really sad is sometimes when I go out to dinner and you see an entire family and no one is engaged with each other, and they're sitting at a restaurant, they're all in their phones.
And they hand a baby a little video game. That one drives me crazy.
Yeah, especially when they don't have any fine motor skills and they're like 18 months old or 2 years old and they can barely touch anything and they're touching the screens. It really pains me. It really
It affected every age group, not just kids, elderly people in my generation.
I mean, I was already crazy. Now I'm a full-on lunatic.
Yeah.
It's all because of the pandemic.
I like to see at the end of the week how much time I used on my phone, right? To look at the usage and think, I have to decrease that.
So we're getting some emails. I've got Rose from Pasco County. I was taught in Pasco County for 13 years, was teacher of the year, moved to Pennsylvania, dropped to step 10, and still got a $5,000 pay increase. Then I went to teach overseas, another $10,000 increase. There are places where teachers can actually make a living, but not Florida, which always has been bad for teachers, and DeSantis has made it worse. It's time to fix this. All the best, Rose. Thanks for your email.
Yes, thank you, Rose.
Marita is trying to come back in. We'll give her one more shot. Marita, are you there?
Yes, I answered you right away when you asked me.
I know, but I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's up? We got a minute or two.
Yeah, and that's why I need to get going, because I'm a nurse and I'm outside my patient's home. And for one thing, I just want to say, no, nurses do not make that much more money.
They make a little bit more, don't they, Rose? Or no, Marita, don't they? I know they're still underpaid. Listen, I told my daughter she wants to do something.
I haven't gotten a raise in years.
All right.
The point is about the telephones, the cell phones. You know, I'm an older adult. I'm 71 years old, and I still have to work because I don't make that much money. And my Social Security has never been high because of my profession. But my thing is that I use my cell phone for a lot of transactions on internet. And I'm wondering, why can't we have these kids use their phones as a learning tool instead of, saying, we need to supply them with laptops and everything. If they've already got a phone and you got Wi-Fi access in the schools, why don't they just hook them up to the internet and teach them on their phone?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for your call, Marita. We're glad you came back in. And I think, Member Combs, I think you indicated that is the case.
Yeah, it is happening. And Marita, I'm going to tell you, even nurses are underpaid. My daughter wants to do something to help people. I said, listen, if you want to help people, you're just never going to make money, and that's okay. So, I mean, I do think nurses are underpaid too, Marita. I just want you to know, but I think nurses, but especially teachers nowadays.
Don't get me started about journalists.
Oh, yes, right. Especially if you're a journalist for something that is so important.
It's okay.
All right, Jason, how much we got more?
We have literally like 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Ladies, let me thank you for joining us this morning, Friday morning on Down and Dirty. We had school board member Nadia Combs, who's running for re-election. Take a look for her endorsement in the Times. And Marlene Sokol, who's with the Times for many, many years and provides us wonderful information about what's going on all over the county and specifically with schools. Ladies, thanks for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for having us, both of you.
Everybody vote.
No,
yes, vote Northwest Tampa.
Yeah,
Jason.
So, we have our last little 15 seconds.
All right, next week we're going to have a debate between the public defender candidates.
Ooh, wow.
Rocky Mercado and Lisa McLean. So that should be interesting and down and dirty.
Oh, that's going to be very down and dirty.
That's a spicy.
And they're both going to be in the studio at the same time. And I will treat them fairly. You can be assured.
I look forward to the fight. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful Friday. Everybody take care and stay down and dirty, everybody.
All right, and listen to the Skinny next.
Thank you so much.